Foundation, investing in creative thinkers and problem solvers who help people, communities, and the planet flourish. More information is available at hewlett.org.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners. And Alliance Bernstein, built on a culture of knowledge and innovation to help advance the financial success of their clients. AllianceBernstein.com. Alliance Bernstein is not affiliated with National Public Radio.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. Well, Mayor Freddie O'Connell's in the studio and ready for your questions, which are already coming in. He joins us each month to make himself available to you, really. We got a few inquiries ahead of time. We'll also be taking calls live here. The line is rocking now, 615-760-2000. I've got some things to ask about. Ice storm fallout, driverless Waymos, East Bank developments, but your questions do take the priority. So what's going on in your corner of Nashville that needs the mayor's attention? We're listening, 615-760-2000. Also live streaming at youtube.com/@WPLN, where you can just ask your question in the chat, and we'll try to work it in. Mayor, welcome back.
Glad to be back.
He comes back each month. We don't know if he'll take the invite again, but we're on a month-to-month basis here. So first things first, since you were last here, driverless Waymos are making their way around all over the city. In fact, we see them here in Metro Center. Have you ridden in one?
I have not, Blake.
Are you concerned about anything you've seen? I don't know how often it's happening, but, kind of stopping up traffic when they're getting a little confused, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I have seen some of this. I'm concerned. I think my biggest concern related to some of the, what you might characterize as misbehavior of driverless vehicles is we lack complete regulatory authority. The state preempted our ability to do anything. We can't say you can't drive down Broadway. We can't say you can't drive through a crowded school zone, right? We have zero ability to impact their routes, their hours of operation, parking, any of that stuff. The state preempted us on this, and so I have a lot of concerns.
Wow. We could talk more about it, but we've got a lot of things to hit today. Relatedly, we got a question from a listener named Robin who has some mobility issues. She said that parking has gotten so much worse downtown for her. She used to even work downtown, parked on the street, just got there early so she could have time and space. But now feels like it's become almost impossible without, doing pricey valet parking or something. Her question is, what's the city doing to make sure that handicapped people like me are not cut off from participating in Nashville culture and community as they work to make downtown more walkable, because it's never going to be walkable for me?
Yeah, it's a great question. I know there has been, the history is if you've got the placard that lets you have, disability favored parking, you have been able to be there. I think what we're trying to make sure, though, is that you've got access, but I think there's a tension between, people who may park for decades in the same spot, and be there all day, every week. And so versus what sounds like here, just a periodic access to downtown.
I see.
Now, we've tried to keep that available. I might be interested, and feel free to send in a note to mayor@nashville.gov to see if we can address some of the specific circumstances. But there's not anything that I'm aware of anyway that has changed that would have prohibited placard-based parking in areas that might be metered, for instance, or whatever. And then, I think you've heard me say this before, Blake. We always try to make sure that the publicly operated garages at Courthouse, at the Fulton Complex, if I'm going down for anything on the sort of south side of downtown, I'll frequently use the convention center. These garages tend to be more competitively priced. And so we do have some garages we try to make available. We're still waiting on a final assessment for the downtown library garage, but the other public garages down there tend to also still be not outrageously priced.
All right. Questions coming in at 615-760-2000, or if you're streaming video at youtube.com/@WPLN. Metal Dirt, watching on YouTube, love the handle, asks, and I prioritize this question because I wonder too, it's just around the corner here. Any info on the bridge on Great Circle Road? The bridge has simply been closed for a while and no updates on Metro's website. Do you know about this bridge over here?
I just saw it on the way over here today, Blake, and I had not been aware that it obviously looks like it's been closed for a minute.
Long time.
Yeah. We'll put that on the list and we'll see if we can get an update. I don't know. here will be the primary question. What I don't know is, I know in Metro Center, there are some private rights of way sprinkled in on the public. So I don't know if this would have been an NDOT closure.
Yep.
I don't know if it's part of, for instance, Metro's Bridges and Culverts program, but we'll get an answer for you.
Okay. Well, Metal Dirt, thanks for the question. This morning, we got a couple of voicemails on the same issue in Bells Bend.
Yes, my name is Brenda Butka. I live in the Bells Bend area of Nashville, right next to a very successful organic farm. And I'm wondering, what is the mayor going to do about the 6 illegal construction dumps within 5 miles of my house? There are more coming every day. We are inundated with mud, trucks, noise, and garbage filling up our valleys.
Hi, my name is Jenny Dickens, and I live in the Bells Bend, Scottsboro area. And I would love to ask Mayor Freddie if he would be willing to come out and take a tour of some of the 6 illegal dumps that we have out here in this area, a conservation corridor. And I'd ask him because I know when you hear illegal dumps, you may think like a pile of stuff on the side of the road, but the scope and size of these dumps, they're massive. And I think you really have to come see for yourself how big and out of control they are, because it's a big problem and we can't seem to get any enforcement. My question is, Mayor Freddie, will you come take a tour of the dumps in Scottsboro with us?
All right, and Mayor, if you can believe it, we actually got another call on the same topic, perhaps coordinated, but still, they've got a point. What's going on?
I believe it, though. And I mean, I know the area well, have had friends out in the various parts of the Bend for years. I mean, we go out to both Bells Bend and Beeman Park regularly. I think probably worth maybe reaching out to some of your listeners and seeing it with my own eyes. I'll tell you, though, even from this issue, while it may have increased a little bit in terms of severity, in terms of number of sites and the activity that's going on, this dates back to when I was still in the Metro Council and used to talk to council members in that area about this issue. It turns out it's very difficult to regulate, because you can go as a property owner, if you have a large acre property, you can typically go get a grading permit that may give you if you've got a hole on the site or whatever, you can put fill in it. And so the hard part is, if you're doing this in a way that is in that really gray area space of how you're reading the law, you can stay within the parameters of the grading permit, but pretty clearly to these neighbors be operating what is effectively a construction and demolition landfill site. And I mean, we looked at it. I have been in extensive meetings with Metro Codes, with Metro Water, looking at what regulatory authority we might have to chase this down. It might be worth escalating this up to TDEC to see. But I mean, when we were on the council, we passed locally the Jackson Law to try to give local residents more say about landfill activity in their community. So probably worth coming out there, seeing it with my own eyes, and seeing if there is any other policy thinking we can get, because we may need to engage state or federal partners on this. It is. I'll say it this way. I've known about the problem for years. When I used to talk to area council members about it, it seemed like it was very challenging, and talk to Metro departments about it, very challenging to use the power of the law to try to curb the activity. And so we'll probably have to open that back up.
All right. Well, there's your answer for now. Let's move on to the phones. 615-760-2000 to ask your question to Mayor Freddie O'Connell. Annie in Nashville, you're on with the mayor. Go ahead.
Hi, Mayor. I appreciate your time today. I'm a big fan of women's soccer, and from what I've read, it seems like we could have an NWSL team play at Geodis, but it might depend on there not being the racetrack. As someone who would rather prefer women's soccer be there than NASCAR, could you tell us where your administration is on this?
Yeah, we supported an NWSL bid a few years ago, and it was not successful. I'm not aware of any active bids out there. There's interest. I think anybody who's been looking at the success of women's sports in the city knows it's possible. But I think we would face the same challenges at a fairground site or anywhere with location of it. I think what I've heard, and again, I'm not typically involved in the final discussions, is that if I'm looking at where MLS is as a league and where NWSL is a league, What I've heard is that NWSL is not looking to be sort of the B team on a scheduling basis. And yes, there may be limited number of total available dates at the fairgrounds. I don't know that the Speedway has much to do with it other than, racing days and TV rights. But the biggest problem is going to be if we need yet another facility, Metro is not in a position to be able to, fund that facility at this time. So I think we're looking at all the opportunities for successful bids. We're very excited that the Upshot League, a new, pre-WNBA league, is coming to Nashville next summer. So I think we're going to continue to see an expansion of women's sports in Nashville. Athletes Unlimited has been here for 2 successful years. Just not sure about site or bid or any of that. We haven't had, closing stages like, hey, we've got a ownership team put together on a bid since the last time that we offered that to the league. And what I heard in that conversation was they needed a little more kind of schedule certainty.
Andy, thanks for the question and for listening in. We've got a couple of questions on the same topic. So, Will, I may end up skipping you and going with Theda in Madison here. Theda, you're on with the mayor. Go ahead.
Hello.
Hi, Theda. Oh, Blake, I think we lost.
Oh,
Theda.
no. Well, a similar question from Will. So, Will, I'm glad you're still on the line. Will, you're on with Mayor Freddie O'Connell. You may have to turn down your radio there to talk to the mayor. You're on with Mayor Freddie O'Connell.
Hey, Freddie. At the launch of your community safety task force, you said that there's more to safety than policing, and I 100% agree with you on that. But the city spends currently about $800 million on police, courts, and jails, but only $5 million on preventative community safety options. I think we agree that's not enough funding for alternatives to police. Will you commit to making major increases to funding for community-based safety programs this budget cycle?
Hey, well, we're very close to the end of the budget cycle. We just brought in a director of violence prevention and crime prevention and violence reduction to the mayor's office, who just started last week. She's going to start working on the community safety task force. I think, unfortunately, their work is not going to give us crisp recommendations for this year's budget cycle, but we do have a lot of good things in there. We were just able to expand, for instance, the REACH program to 24/7 availability this past December. That's a co-response model that has NFD, our Nashville Fire Department, and mental health providers in that. We've got Partners in Care, again, expanded countywide. So we're working on a whole lot of co-response, alternate response. We've got, other forms of violence intervention and prevention happening through the Metro Public Health Department, and the Community Safety Task Force is still up and running. So we're going to look to expand those programs, but also want to make sure we get really good recommendations from that work, and want to have a chance for our new director to also sink her teeth into that.
Will, thanks for that question on policing and alternatives. Let's take another kind of budgetary question. Andrew in Nashville. Go ahead. You're on with the mayor.
Hi, Mayor O'Connell. You recently said that affordability and safety are your top priorities. And, of course, when you ran for mayor, you famously told us you want us to stay. Unfortunately, your affordable housing investments up to this point have not really met the urgency of the crisis we're facing. So my question is, if affordability is still really a top priority for you, will you commit to making unprecedented investments this budget cycle into permanently affordable social housing, including through the use of bonds? Thanks.
Hey, Andrew. Thanks for that. Yeah, we've already been making unprecedented investments on affordability across the board, not only Choose How You Move, which has offered our first ever income-based and social services-based fare-free program that's already welcomed 10,000 riders and offered more than 1 million fare-free trips. I think that is one of the biggest affordability things we've been able to offer, and one of the top costs that households face. And then on housing, we've actually, in the current budget we're in, made one of the largest ever local investments in housing affordability in the city's history. And the hard part is we also had a significant amount of one-time federal funding, as well as historic surplus funding in the Metro budget that is all gone now, which means that any investments we're making are local only. We are welcoming new partners to the table. We just launched the Catalyst Fund a couple of years ago. Metro made a $20 million investment in that fund. We do expect this year to, in this budget cycle, make our largest ever local investment in housing affordability. We're very lucky to have had a full year of the Unified Housing Strategy underway. It is guiding some of those new investments. We do expect to have at least a pilot for a new housing bond. So there's a lot that we are evaluating right now, but I'm currently expecting that we will be making our largest ever investment in housing affordability in this year's budget.
Andrew, thanks for the question. I have a related question here that came in by email from Bill Sheary. I think Bill, I hope that's how you pronounce your last name. And thank you for coming to the front porch party a couple weeks ago. What is your position on the conversion of old hotels and motels? I think up his way, there's a Days Inn in Jolton where there's maybe talk about turning it into maybe more than talk about turning it into workforce housing. Yeah, is this an opportunity that Metro would get involved in? Because his concern is actually about there not being the infrastructure around to handle this since it wasn't designed that way.
Yeah, Blake, I think, if you're looking at the number of people who come into a hotel use versus converting, and the same thing is true for offices, we've seen some level of interest in converting office buildings to housing. I think we're sort of in a position where Nashville, with our unified housing strategy, we're looking at an all-option scenario. I wouldn't say I would be opposed to looking at a converted use. I also know that our planning department, from years of work on rezoning, looks at capacity and infrastructure, and they're not going to approve something if they you're not going to get a staff recommendation that a rezoning makes sense if they don't think that the overall city or the area that it's going can support it. So I'm assuming that Jolton project went through the standard zoning process. We don't look at every single zoning bill that comes through from hey, what are the extraordinary details of this? But we do pay attention to if there's anything that gets disapproved or has a lot of discussion at Planning Commission. And I didn't see anything on this one, but I'd say we're looking at multiple different scenarios, and the Metro Council helpfully requested a housing and infrastructure study to make sure that we are, in almost all cases, looking to combine housing affordability with infrastructure capacity. And so we're very fortunate, too, to now have dedicated funding for transportation and infrastructure, where I know Metro Water is hard at work on a stormwater master plan. So we've got a lot of infrastructure work underway. We also have a lot of housing necessity in the city. So we're trying to find all the sweet spots we can at this point.
All right, we need to take our first break. When we come back, more of your calls, and it's a good time to call. We've got one person, Keenan. We'll get to your question when we get back, but the lines are open for you. You can get your question in with Mayor Freddie O'Connell. The number is 615-760-2000. We'll start off with the initial report on some of NES's shortcomings in the ice storm, and then get to your questions. You can also drop a question in the chat of the video stream at youtube.com/@WPLN. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
Champagne glass.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners. And Amazon, proud sponsor of WPLN's daily show, This Is Nashville, engaging our differences so we can discover our unity. More on Amazon's community work at aboutamazon.com. And Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee, helping donors make more possible through the power of community giving. More at cfmt.org. And Margaret W. Wong and Associates, providing a range of immigration services for companies and individuals with attorneys and staff who speak English, Spanish, Mandarin, and many more languages. Learn more at imwong.com.
Sometimes the news raises as many questions as it answers. How did things get this way? Why do we do that here? Has this kind of thing happened before? And you know what? I'm not one to let those questions go unanswered. I'm Nina Cardona, and every weekday I share the latest local news and dig into history to uncover the backstory. It's all on the Nash Villager podcast, and you can listen at WPLN.org or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. We're fortunate Mayor Freddie O'Connell still agrees to do this once a month. Join us in studio. Take your questions. The phones are busy today, so get in now. 615-760-2000 is the number. Or, again, you can join the conversation in the chat of our video stream. It's at youtube.com/@WPLN. I promise we're going to make that easier someday. Let's jump into NES. The consulting firm that Nashville Electric Service hired to do this kind of after-action report from the ice storm in January has submitted kind of an interim report about deficiencies largely related to communication. Mayor, do you expect, the city's doing its own kind of independent panel is looking into this. You expect roughly the same findings?
Well, here's what I'd say. We're trying to be comprehensive, non-duplicative. So we're doing interviews, the Winter Storm Commission chaired by Governor Bredesen, with his expertise going back to the 1994 ice storm and dealing with the 1998 tornado, lots of tree damage, lots of some of the same concerns and issues. So really glad to have his expertise leading up that panel. So the commission they're engaged in interviews. My guidance to Governor Bredesen as he started this as chair was we knew that NES would be doing a very kind of rapid after action here. And so I encouraged the commission take those findings and incorporate them as kind of, an exhibit in the commission's work. Very glad to have this report in hand. I think, I don't know that I'd characterize a lot in it yet. I mean, I haven't read the entire report yet, but the early summary of findings seems to be on track with what we experienced in the mayor's office. And I think it's very interesting to already be getting a couple weeks of feedback from NES seeming to dial up the tree trimming program. I've heard about that from different corners of Nashville.
But people may be complaining now. Right? It's like,
now we're complaining about how dare you.
How soon we forget.
I remember after the 1990s, that's when the modern tree trimming program started, and it used to be you'd see the NES crews coming down the street to trim trees, and trees better look out at that point. And then it sort of seemed like, hey, maybe we didn't trim enough, and now that we're trimming again, we're in that. I'm sure NES feels that pinch of rock and hard place.
Yeah.
On this one.
Well, so some of the high points. The utility's emergency response plan lacked detail to handle such a large-scale event, which, it was unprecedented. Unclear chain of command maybe caused inconsistent messaging. NES didn't have a model to predict damage or like a reliable method for estimating what would be needed, kind of bringing in workers from out of state or out of town. Utility initially didn't provide this estimated time of restoration to customers. And of course, when they did, it was often inaccurate. Then NES failed to effectively coordinate communications with its operations, which resulted in inaccurate messaging. Like, is this really just a communications problem?
I will say one of the things we want from our commission is we want sort of that timeline of events, the things leading up to the ice storm, initial forecasts, changes in those forecasts. Snow starting to fall on day one, and then that becoming freezing rain and ice by the, Sunday of that weekend. And then everything that happened subsequent to that. And then I think, too, we want to understand what happened not just in Middle Tennessee, but across the state, across the path of the full storm. What I've heard from talking to both regional city and county mayors is that you get just far enough outside of Nashville, and the impact of ice was far less significant.
Yeah.
You go down to Oxford, Mississippi, though, and you had a lot of similar challenges to Nashville in a city with fewer resources in some cases to help deal with them. And so there are some cities that had much closer scenarios to where we are. We know, for instance, we heard that we got our schools open much quicker than several other cities across Tennessee. And so I want to be able to do that full comprehensive analysis to say, I think, we can all observe that there were communications challenges there, but I think digging into it, if you look at that, I just saw some of the data of, the overall time to restore a number of outages across the 12-day period. And there are parts of that I can say, I can look at objectively and say this was literally the worst tree damage in the city's history, one of the most impactful winter weather events in the city's history. And that's going to tax any plan, no matter how thoroughly prepared it is. But did we perform comparatively worse, better, same, normal? That's the part that I want to get more into with the commission's findings.
Happy to take questions on this point and any others on your mind. 615-760-2000 is the number, or you can drop it in the chat, youtube.com/@WPLN, our video stream. Let's go to the phones. Keenan, you've been waiting patiently from the Hillsborough West End neighborhood. You're on with the mayor. Go ahead.
Hey, thank you so much for taking my call. My question's a little bit more softball than the NES stuff. I was just curious, are we able to ease restrictions in some of these local residential neighborhoods for more small businesses or business mixed use for residential and small business?
Yeah, Keenan, that's a really interesting question. We've done some amount of that. I don't know how closely you followed some of the policy updates from the Metro Council the past few years. Some of these date back to when I was on the council. There is a home occupation scenario that's in play that gives an easier pathway to people, for instance, offering piano lessons. Thanks to the Metro Council, we just got some fast track for childcare scenarios in the permitting process. And again, we're going to offer, with their assistance and partnership, ideally in the next few weeks, pathway to some more home-based childcare options and ease some of that because we know how big a deal childcare is. One of the hard parts is, I think, Nashvillians have always wanted zoning clarity in the sense of, if you live on a residential block, you don't necessarily want, for instance, a bar or nightclub next door. We've had some really difficult and complicated conversations about the proximity, for instance, of residential areas to commercial corridors where you've seen an emergence of a bar or nightclub scene. And so I think, we're trying to make sure, I think what I hear from people all over the city is just still how much of a priority housing affordability is. And so we're trying to keep that as a focus. But I'd say, if you've got a neighborhood context that you see some opportunities for more flexibility, I would just be in touch with your council member. That was one of my favorite things I did for 8 years on the Metro Council, was working with neighbors and residents to find that ideal mix of uses that made communities vibrant but kept quality of life high. It's something that good council members spend a lot of time and energy on.
Keenan, thanks for the question. I wouldn't call it a softball. I mean, could be, zoning issues about as controversial as it gets. So, good luck, Keenan.
Thank you so much.
All right, let's take another call. Here's Mike in Nashville. You're on with the mayor. Go ahead.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I'm calling about a recent article in the Tennessee, and it was a very informative, great article about our property taxes and the problems we're having with our inability to charge impact fees anymore since 2006. Also, the fact that we have all these state government buildings that are tax exempt, but they're hosted here in our city on our dirt. And then lastly, the tourism, how we don't have access, apparently, to our own surpluses from our own convention center. All of this being, lorded over us by the state. What can be done? Is there any legal basis on this, or?
Mike, this is one of the most complicated issues that I think local governments across Tennessee are confronting right now, especially those like Nashville that are fast growing. And to your point, don't have access to impact fees. I mean, just down the road in Williamson County, they do. Impact fees are designed to offer not just development community a predictable scenario for understanding the cost of growth, knowing that growth very rarely fundamentally pays for itself. It certainly has not been doing that completely in Nashville, in the regard of new developments and needing sometimes additional water, sewer, or stormwater capacity, or impact on streets and sidewalks, those kinds of things. And meanwhile, we've been litigated against when we've tried to create public policy that would induce developers to participate more in the cost of growth. So we're kind of stuck between state policy and litigation, and it does create challenges in Nashville. As I talk to mayors throughout the mid-state and across Tennessee, the costs of infrastructure and growth really are top of mind for almost all of us. And it means that we continue to work with organizations like the Tennessee Municipal League, the Greater Nashville Regional Council, the Association of County Mayors. I mean, I'm involved in all three of those, and we try to press our case to the state. Every now and then we will make fits and starts progress. But yeah, we would love to reclaim more of that shared money, because for, on any dollar of sort of, that a visitor to our great city might spend, we're going to send 7 cents on top of that dollar to the state of Tennessee, and we're going to keep, 2.5 for ourselves. And so that's a formula where we know that the way we fund city services, the way we keep police officers on patrol and teachers in schools and librarians in libraries is fundamentally on the basis of property taxes. But yeah, we do need a strong property tax base for that to work, and we need those activity taxes as much as possible to come back here as part of our local option. So we're continuing to press the case, but you're spot on in understanding the analysis of the issues we face.
Thanks, Mike. And Mike was talking about the convention center money, because there was this bill in the state legislature that would divvy up this tax surplus that's sitting there. It all comes from that tourism zone.
Yeah, the
fund
tourism development zone.
I think there's like $300 million to the East Bank, $30 million annually to attract big events like the Super Bowl and other things like it. Is that something you supported, or did the state just sort of do its own thing there?
It's one of those things where we had elements of financial analysis that allowed us to support some pieces of it. We're very excited to have certainty, for instance, about infrastructure funding on the East Bank. I think far less excited about some makeup of a new sort of board to look at some of that spending in downtown. Over the past several years with the Convention Center Authority, though, we have been able to make a case where we effectively got them participating in a payment in lieu of taxes that did bring money back. I give Mayor Cooper considerable credit for trying to keep some of that money in downtown. We have been approaching the Convention Center Authority for the past several years. We've continued again a tradition started under Mayor Cooper's administration where we offer them a plan for public safety and some improvements in downtown. That's resulted in some safety spending that has resulted in some improvements to places like Walk of Fame Park or the First and Second Avenue after the bombing, kind of participating in that. My hope is that this state bill does not disrupt our ability to continue to have, kind of money spent in downtown, continue to offer improvements there, because we're using the overall success of the growth of downtown and a significant tax base in our urban core to push resources out into places like Old Hickory, where we just introduced a new community center.
Time's short, so we've got one last question we'll take from the phones. Toby in Nashville, you're on with the mayor. Go ahead.
Hi, Mayor. Thank you so much for everything you do for the city.
Thanks, Toby. Good to hear from you.
I had a quick question or comment about Metropolis parking. Recently, they gave everybody, or most people in Nashville, two $15 promo credits within the app to use, I thought, anywhere in their parking, but come to find out lately, I went down to the Cherry Blossom Festival, used the parking, didn't get the credit, chatted with someone with Metropolis, and they told me it's only certain parking lots.
Oh, gosh, I didn't even know that. Because I'll tell you, I'm one of the Nashvilleians who also got that email from Metropolis, and so haven't used my credits yet.
Well, and I mean, how is this? How are we supposed to know?
Oh, that's a good one. So here,
I sent an email to your to mayor at Nashville.gov too, asking that question.
Let me see if we can reach out to Metropolis and get some clarity about that. Yeah, you may know this. This is actually, while I'll say I and our Department of Law frequently disagree with the State Attorney General's office about not only their outlook on policy but also application of law. This is a case where they did some really important work on consumer protection, and so this credit is kind of an outcome of work they did with parking companies, including Metropolis in Nashville. So let's see if we can get some clarity from them. And I don't know, one way or the other, we'll see if they have a resource up maybe that better explains this somewhere among either their web or social assets, and we'll try to elevate that. We try to make sure that after I visit with Blake, we send some follow-ups for some of the listener questions that we couldn't answer immediately on air. So we'll see if we can get back to you on this one.
Toby, and it's
terrible.
Go ahead,
Is
Toby.
there any way they're going away? I mean, Metropolis, God. I mean, I just feel like they are just a terrible parking company.
Well, and again, they had to, I think, as a result of some mergers and acquisitions activity, actually divest of some of the parking assets under their control. And so, again, we know they're private operators. And I mean, again, we are in the market too as Metro with our own garages and on-street parking. And we are always trying to offer better types of service at as low a cost as we can. So, sorry to hear about your experience, and we'll see if we can follow up for you.
And it's precisely the kind of question that I would not have asked, Toby. So I'm glad that you did, because I'm sure it's an important one. People got that credit burning a hole in their pocket, and they need to be able to use it.
Blake, I got to ask, though, did you get the email and the credit?
I don't know that I did. I mean, I have some questions about the Laz parking, but that's another
another episode.
For another day. Mayor, thank you so much for being with us. We'll get you on your way.
All right. Blake, thanks. Talk to you later.
Up next, Curious Nashville, and a very timely question that has come from more than just one listener. What would it actually take to put our power lines underground? We've got some answers. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
We want Freddie for a leader. Oh, stay to raise your champagne glass.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners. And Tennessee State Parks, inviting listeners to learn more about overnight escapes featuring cabins, lodges, and camping under the stars. Tennessee State Parks. Nature is outside your door. More about planning stays at tnstateparks.com. And the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at Vanderbilt University, offering intellectual courses for adults over 50. Learn more about the wide-ranging topics and full curriculum at vanderbilt.edu/OLLI. And the Gibson Garage flagship location in downtown Nashville, a place where guitar players and music fans alike can explore, play, and shop. More at gibsongarage.com and on socials at Official Gibson Garage.
North Korea's founding leader, Kim Il-sung, understood the power of faith, whether that's faith in religion or in people.
There is a natural, innate human desire to put people up on pedestals, almost to worship people. Being in the 21st century hasn't changed that.
We hear how he used faith to build a long-lasting cult of personality next time on The World.
This afternoon at 2 on 90.3 WPLN News.
Curious Nashville.
It's not getting old for me. I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Curious Nashville. Often with Curious Nashville, we're answering a single person's burning question about a mystery that our city holds that even stumps us in the WPLN newsroom. Today's question certainly stumps us to a degree, but it's one that we've heard from many people, especially after January's ice storm and the subsequent blackout of half the city. What would be involved in putting electrical lines in the ground in Nashville? Surely the cost of not having them has been negated by this recent ice storm damage. That's the question. So could underground lines be retrofitted area by area? Well, the answer is we really don't know what it would take, but there has been some action on this front as recently as yesterday. At a Nashville Electric Service board meeting, the utility committed to begin studying what it would take to put lines underground in Nashville.
So in response to Winter Storm Fern and as part of the Pillar 4 initiative that Teresa touched on, NES is committed to completing a system-wide undergrounding and grid hardening study.
That was Daniel Johnson with NES, referencing Teresa Broyles-Applin there, the utility's CEO. The board voted to allocate $3 million to a 3-year contract with Burns and McDonnell, who will conduct this study. And it's also meant to look at grid hardening, as you heard there from Daniel Johnson, not just putting lines underground. But NES declined to provide anyone to talk about putting lines underground, at least right now. So We called Wade Sexton. He's a board member of the National Utility Contractors Association of Tennessee. He's got 3 decades of experience as a utility contractor, works in lobbying elected officials on investment in infrastructure. Wade Sexton, welcome to This is Nashville.
Thank you, Blake. I appreciate you having me on the show.
Well, so our question is, what would be involved in putting power lines underground, retrofitting neighborhoods in Nashville? Obviously, there's going to be a multi-year study at the cost of $3 billion to actually answer that question. But can you kind of give us a good idea? What does it take generally?
To start off with, I guess, electricity has always been considered a quality of life kind of issue. It needs to be affordable, and we've got to get it to everyone. And I think with that, that's overhead is always going to be the least cost to install, least cost to maintain, least cost to repair. So that's why so many years it's all been put in overhead. Because the customers generally have to bore that cost. But going back to putting it actually underground. I was involved in starting a pilot project years ago, right after a similar event to this. It was a mass outage. At that time, I worked for a utility company, a large municipal utility company. And these pilot projects, I'll tell you a little bit about kind of how they work and then kind of maybe some of the struggles they have. But, pilot project, basically, you're going in trying to figure out, okay, how do we make the math work as far as to take these lines, these overhead lines, and put them underground, therefore obviously having less outages during an ice event or a snow event or heavy wind. And typically, the pilot project start off with there's 2 components. You go in, you'll find a neighborhood, and those components are one, the main lines that in this case would be NES or the utility company, electric utility company. Those can think of those as lines that run along the street. Those lines obviously have to be put underground. And then also there's the lines that run to your house, which is considered a service. And those also have to be put underground. And when you get into underground in many utility districts, I'm not sure what NES's rules are, but that when you go underground, that means that's your responsibility. That's a customer responsibility to install those services underground to their meter from the street.
Wait, can you help me out with this? You're saying that almost like a water line is, like at some point the water line is your responsibility. You're saying that underground it's maybe similar where you might have to pay for that?
Yes. So typically, if it's an overhead service, the utility company defines a service point, and that's usually if it's overhead, it's at the weatherhead, so it's at your house.
Well, we learned a lot about that in the ice storm, because it was like, hey, you got to make sure if your weather mast is not in good shape, then that's your responsibility. But everything beyond that was NES. So you're saying it's different if it's an underground line?
Typically, yes. It can be two parts. It can be you may be responsible for the entire conduit install, which the wires installed. So the conduit installation from the street transformer all the way to your meter at your house, and that includes the conduit wire and all the connections. That's how it is done part of the state. And there are other utilities within the state that will say, okay, you put the conduit in, you hire your own excavator to dig the conduit in from the transformer to the house, and then we as a utility company will go and pull the wire in to your meter. So you're not paying that. That's in those situations, you're not paying for the wire, but you're still having to pay for the conduit install.
Yeah,
which is that's one of the largest costs, especially in the Nashville area with rock. Everyone knows there's a lot of rock in Nashville, but typically, yes, you are responsible. It is your service coming from the transformer sitting at the street, if it's underground, to your meter.
So what does your pilot project look like? I assume this was like a retrofitting kind of pilot project?
It was. So there's 2 costs. There's that cost, and then there's the cost of obviously burying the main lines. And we did a pilot project. Again, I have no idea what NES is looking at. I have no firsthand knowledge of that. Just typically what I've seen these pilot projects in the past is you go in, and obviously there's some cost, and either utility can absorb all that cost or pass some of that along to the customer for installing the main line, because there's no new revenue generated. So you're incurring these costs and no new revenue being generated. So some utilities, they have asked for the customers say, hey, you're going to pay a portion of this for burying the main lines underground, and then you've got to pay a portion for burying your service underground. And that can range from anywhere from $1,000 for your service, your portion, to a couple of $1,000, and then as far as the mainline portion could be similar. So there's really, there's always the customer is always going to bear some cost.
So are you, and I want you to keep explaining this, but am I hearing you say here that, like, for people who are saying, let's get these lines underground, don't think that the utility itself is going to be able to pay for that. You're going to have to pay for some of that upfront cost.
Typically, yes.
Yeah.
Because, if you look at the system-wide, a large system, to get off a little bit from the pilot project, but just the vastness of the number, to go from a complete system overhead to underground, is tremendous.
Is it even done? Do people? I mean, I read San Diego was starting on this, and man, it was the price tag was out of this world. Like, is it done?
Not common. No, I have, in my years of experience, 30 plus years of experience, I've never seen anyone that's even after running these pilot projects, they generally over a period of time, struggle, and it's just because if you look at a utility, say, if you've got typical utilities, from what my experience and when I've talked to engineers and past utility presidents, you're looking at probably somewhere in the neighborhood in a rural area of $500,000 a mile. That's rural. You move into an urban area, something like a Nashville or one of the other, Memphis or something like that, you're in the $1 million to $2 million per mile to go underground. Is a good average.
Just for the main line.
Yes, just for the main line. Yes. So if you're in some place where you have a lot of rock, like typically maybe Nashville, you're probably going closer to that $2 million a mile, $2 million per mile.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do the math. I'll let you guys do the math. But I think if you've got 6,000 roughly, just for 6,000 miles of line, majority of it overhead, and you're looking at $1 million to $2 million per mile, you can see it gets into the multi-digit billions.
I think that number starts with a B. So
yes, it starts with a B, a big B.
All right. So I'm Blake Farmer. This is Nashville utility expert Wade Sexton is answering our Curious Nashville question about kind of what it might take to retrofit the city and move power lines underground. What are some of these hiccups that people get hit? I mean, is it because I'm guessing it's not just the utility's decision? Like, do you need a neighborhood to buy in? I mean, if people are going to have to pay it, I imagine some people are like, I'm not paying.
Absolutely. That's where they struggle. Even with utilities on these pilot projects, typically the utility company will put a tremendous. They would like to see them be successful.
Yeah.
They're not trying to make these be unsuccessful. Trust me. They will give tremendous amount of credits and very conservative on the estimates to try to get those numbers that the customer would have to pay up front down as low as possible. They really do, but it still can't. It's still just generally not zero. And with that, and really, it doesn't make sense to bury a circuit along a street unless you get 100% participation.
Yeah.
So you ask the customer. The way these pilot projects, you ask the customer to put a little bit of money in. You ask 100% commitment to everyone does it, so you can. You can bury this underground, and you do that, and then the neighborhood before you didn't do that. You couldn't get enough participation. They refused to do it. The storm happens, wind happens, and then their overhead power lines go down. You still have the outage. So you spent this money. You've done all this stuff. You've done everything you've to get your neighborhood put underground, but the next guy didn't, and your power's still out.
But Wade, you are disappointing a lot of listeners who are like, we've got to get going on this. And I mean, surely, as somebody who lobbies for investment in utilities, this is something that you would love to see, because it would be years and years of work for people who you represent. So, like, what? Yeah, help me out. Is it feasible in any way?
Yes, obviously new construction. Yes, new construction. That you should, I think utility companies, I'm not going to speak directly about, I don't know NES's policy at all, but I think, new development absolutely should be encouraged to go underground, and be, that should be, done on the utility level, encourage all new development. And there's some misconceptions too about going underground. Going underground. And again, yes, I would love to do the work for my membership. Would love to be in there, changing every neighborhood out from overhead to underground. But when you get into there's a misconception that underground has no maintenance, and that's not accurate. Obviously, you don't have storm maintenance, but there's the underground cables do not last like the overhead cables do. So
I see. What? Because there's
have
water underground and that.
Well,
or what,
no, just the way
else?
they're designed. There's a wire inside of a wire with an insulator in between it, and that insulator will break down over time, and the two wires will have a fault. So there's still maintenance with underground. It is not zero.
And I assume that making a little repair like that becomes a bigger job because you got to start digging things up.
Absolutely. Digging up faults and pulling new wire. That is or underground is much more expensive to maintain, other than obviously the trees and storms.
Right. Well, that's what people are looking at, and we don't have the final price tag on what this really cost NES. But my guess is it's not going to start with a B.
Probably not. Typically, they do not, in what I've seen.
So even though we had this episode and we're all thinking about it now, like, why don't we get the power lines underground? I'm just hearing you say that the math probably still doesn't math.
Probably not. The stomach it would take to take that kind of cost on. I mean, that these utility companies, they're not profit centers. They don't generate any profit. They just pass everything through. So if I spend money on you, I've got to go get it from someone else. I mean, it's just a pass through. There's no profit. There's no to go after. So the money's got to come from somewhere. It's got to come from the customers, the ratepayers. 20-year storm. Do you invest, double-digit billions of dollars to try to fix that, which would probably obviously would have a significant impact on your rates. And I know again, I know everyone wants to hear this, that, hey, let's put it all underground. And I've been there, I've done it. I've tried to push these pilot projects through, and they just seem to falter when you have to start getting everyone to contribute, and it would take so long to see any real benefit from them.
Well, Wade Sexton, we're so appreciative of your expertise in helping us sort of look forward at what is to come and what questions maybe we should be asking as ratepayers. Wade Sexton, board member of the National Utility Contractors Association of Tennessee, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Blake.
And thank you for tuning in this hour, being part of the conversation. It's so helpful, whether it's Curious Nashville or Ask the Mayor. This is kind of your time. It's our service to you. I hope you enjoyed. This is Nashville's a production of Nashville Public Radio. If you missed yesterday's show, it's all about pulling books from library shelves, or at least the kids section, banning books, protecting children. Learned a lot about where we are in Tennessee right now. You can listen at thisisnashville.org or wherever you get podcasts. You can also watch at youtube.com/@WPLN. Was not wearing a tux yesterday. Today's episode produced by Mary Mancini and Cynthia Abrams, directed by Tasha A.F. Limley, Josh Deepen working the phones, Liv Lombardi making us sound and look our best. The masterminds behind our theme music are LaRange and Namir Blade. You can comment, tell us what you want to hear on the show by leaving us a message anytime, 615-751-2500. I'm Blake Farmer. Go in peace.
Partnership 2030 is the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce's public-private initiative